The rain had been falling since the evening, a slow, rhythmic drumming that wrapped the house in a cocoon of sound. It started gently, a soft pattering against the windows, the kind you could fall asleep to. But as the night deepened, the rain grew louder, heavier, until it felt like it was pounding against the very bones of the house. I lay awake, cocooned beneath a heavy blanket, listening. The room was dimly lit by the soft blue glow of my bedside clock. 2:13 a.m. Each passing minute dragged like an eternity. The house creaked around me, the old wooden beams moaning quietly under the weight of the storm. The windows rattled now and then when the wind howled, a long, low sound that seemed almost alive. I shifted under the covers, trying to shake off the growing unease that had settled in my chest hours ago. Mom was late. She had promised she'd only be gone for a few hours, but her absence stretched longer and longer, each second gnawing at my nerves. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the world for a heartbeat. For that single moment, I caught a glimpse of the wet garden, the old oak tree bending under the force of the wind, and the empty, glistening driveway. No headlights, no sign of her car, and then, tap, tap, tap. A sound so soft I almost missed it, a gentle tapping at the front door. My heart stumbled in my chest. I sat up, my blanket falling from my shoulders, and strained to listen. For a moment, there was nothing but the rain. Had I imagined it? Tap, tap, tap. There it was again, precise, deliberate. Not the random beating of branches against the house. Not the shifting of the wind. Someone was outside. A sharp chill crawled down my spine. I reached for my phone lying on the nightstand, my fingers trembling slightly. No new messages. No missed calls. The battery hovered at a desperate 9%. I stared at the screen, hoping, praying that Mom would call, that she'd tell me it was her outside. But the phone remained silent. Another knock, this time louder. 3 sharp raps that echoed through the hollow house. I wrapped the blanket tighter around myself and swung my legs off the bed, my bare feet meeting the cold wooden floor. Each step towards the door felt heavier, as if the air itself thickened, trying to hold me back. My mind raced. It's probably just someone needing help, maybe a stranded driver, maybe someone lost. But deep down, in the oldest, most primal part of my brain, I knew better. I crept towards the living room, where the front door stood framed by 2 narrow windows. The storm outside was fierce, the world beyond the glass a swirling, chaotic mass of darkness and rain. I hesitated, peering through the peephole. Nothing. Just the distorted image of the porch, slick with rain. I pressed my ear against the door, heart pounding. Silence. Except for the faintest sound. A voice, no louder than a breath. Please, let me in. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over my own feet. It was a child's voice, high-pitched, fragile. It tugged at something deep inside me, a desperate instinct to protect, to help. But that instinct fought against something stronger, raw, bone-deep fear. Who would send a child out in a storm like this? At 2 in the morning? At my door? In the middle of nowhere? The rain hammered harder against the windows. Thunder rolled across the sky, deep and rumbling, making the floor vibrate under my feet. I took another step back. The doorknob jiggled, just slightly. My blood turned to ice. Another whisper, closer this time. I'm cold. I'm so cold. Please, let me in. Tears sprang to my eyes, unbidden. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. But I couldn't move. Something inside me, something I couldn't explain, told me that if I opened that door, I would never be the same again. Lightning split the sky once more. For a heartbeat, in that burst of blinding white, I saw it. Not through the peephole this time, but through the narrow window beside the door. A small figure, drenched in rain, standing perfectly still, face obscured by long, wet hair hanging down in strings. And even through the glass, I could see. It was smiling. I stumbled back another step, my breathing ragged, my chest tight. The smile outside the window, if it could even be called that, didn't waver. It was wrong. Too wide. Too empty. The child's face remained hidden behind strands of soaked hair, but the curve of those lips, stretched unnaturally from ear to ear, burned into my vision like a scar. Please. The voice whispered again, though the figure outside hadn't moved an inch. I'm cold. It was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. My instincts screamed at me now, louder than any thunderclap outside. This was no lost child. This was something else. I backed away, my legs trembling so badly I had to grip the edge of a nearby table for support. A vase toppled over and crashed to the floor, shattering into 1,000 glittering shards. The sound echoed through the empty house. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, deliberately, the figure outside raised its head. My heart plummeted. Through the dripping hair, 2 hollow, black sockets stared back at me. Empty, gaping voids where eyes should have been. The smile widened, as if it could sense my horror, feeding on it, growing stronger. I turned and ran, not caring how loud my footsteps were, sprinting down the hallway towards my bedroom. I slammed the door shut behind me and locked it, my hands fumbling with the tiny, useless latch. The rain battered the house harder now, almost as if the storm itself was trying to force its way in. I collapsed against the door, my body sliding down until I was sitting on the floor, my knees pulled tightly to my chest. Tears blurred my vision. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. I repeated it like a mantra, trying to drown out the overwhelming terror threatening to crush me. The house creaked again, but this time it wasn't the wind. It was footsteps. Slow, deliberate, inside, coming down the hallway, coming closer, coming for me. I pressed my hand against my mouth to stifle a scream, my body trembling violently. The footsteps stopped just outside my door. For a moment, there was only the sound of the rain. Then, scraping, like nails, long, sharp nails, dragging slowly, methodically, down the wooden door. I squeezed my eyes shut, fresh tears spilling down my cheeks. The scraping continued, a cruel, taunting sound that seemed to last forever. Then silence. I opened my eyes, heart hammering against my ribs. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. A minute. Nothing. I dared to hope, dared to breathe again. Maybe it was gone. Maybe it. Bang. The door shook violently under the force of a sudden, furious blow. I screamed, clamping both hands over my mouth as if I could somehow pull the sound back inside me. Another bang. And another. The thin wooden door rattled on its hinges, the lock straining. Something was trying to get in. Something strong. I scrambled backwards, my back hitting the far wall. I was trapped. No phone. No weapon. No way out. Another bang. This time, a crack appeared in the wood, splintering outward like a spider web. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Silence. Thick. Oppressive. I sat frozen, too terrified to move, to even breathe. The storm raged on outside, the rain an endless roar against the windows. And somewhere, in the darkness beyond my door, something waited. Minutes crawled by like hours. I sat there, pressed against the wall, the taste of fear metallic in my mouth. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind outside, felt amplified, distorted, like the walls themselves were whispering. Finally, gathering what little courage I had left, I forced myself to stand. I had to get out. I had to survive the night. Slowly, painfully slowly, I crossed the room and pressed my ear against the door. Nothing. No breathing. No movement. Just the relentless downpour outside. Maybe it really was gone. I hesitated only a second longer before slowly turning the lock with trembling fingers. Click. The sound echoed in the silence, louder than I intended. I opened the door a crack, just enough to peer into the dark hallway beyond. It was empty. No sign of the thing that had been there before. Swallowing my terror, I slipped out, my bare feet silent against the cold floorboards. The hallway stretched ahead, long and impossibly dark, even though I was sure I'd left a lamp on earlier. It was as if the shadows had swallowed the light whole. Step by step, I crept forward. The house felt different now, unfamiliar, twisted somehow, as if the walls had shifted when I wasn't looking. I moved past the kitchen, the living room, each space more distorted than the last. Furniture warped at impossible angles, portraits hanging upside down, doors where there hadn't been doors before. I knew this house. I had lived here for years. But tonight it was becoming something else. A maze. A trap. And I was its prey. Suddenly, from somewhere deep within the house, I heard it. A soft, wet thud. Followed by another. And another. Growing louder. Closer. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to see through the darkness. And then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, half shrouded in shadow, something was crawling towards me. It moved with a jerky, unnatural rhythm, arms bending the wrong way, legs dragging behind it uselessly. The same soaked hair. The same hollow eyes. The same too wide smile. The storm clawed at me as I sprinted blindly into the darkness. Branches whipped against my face. Mud sucked at my feet, trying to pull me under. The cold was a living thing, sinking its teeth deep into my bones. Behind me, the ruined house loomed like a dying monster, broken windows gaping like open mouths, doors swinging wildly in the howling wind. But worse than the house were the things I had seen inside it. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get as far away as possible. Through the sheets of rain, shapes loomed, trees twisted and blackened, their limbs like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. I stumbled into the woods, the ground uneven and treacherous. Every shadow seemed alive. Every gust of wind sounded like whispered voices. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out beneath me and I collapsed onto the muddy forest floor. For a moment, I just lay there, gasping, rain pouring down on me. And that's when I heard it. A faint sound, just beyond the roar of the storm. Children laughing. Soft, high-pitched giggles, floating through the trees like smoke. I forced myself up, heart hammering against my ribs. There, through the darkness, a faint glow. A light. A way out. I stumbled toward it, branches tearing at my clothes, the mud sucking at my every step. As I got closer, the laughter grew louder, sharper, until it twisted into something else. Something cruel. Mocking. I broke through the trees into a small clearing. At its center stood an old, crumbling playground, rusted swings swaying in the wind, a half-buried merry-go-round creaking slowly. The light I'd seen came from a single flickering street lamp standing crooked at the playground's edge. And under that sickly yellow glow were the children. Not the kind you see on a sunny afternoon, laughing and playing. These children were wrong. Their skin was pale and bloated, their clothes soaked and rotting. Their eyes. God, their eyes were empty black pits, as if someone had hollowed them out. They stood motionless, staring straight at me. One by one, their heads tilted at impossible angles, their mouths stretching into grotesque smiles. And then, all at once, they began to move. Not walking, not running, crawling. Their limbs contorted, their fingers digging into the mud, pulling themselves toward me with horrifying speed. The same sickening wet slaps I'd heard in the house. getting closer, closer. I turned and ran, my scream lost in the howling wind. The forest swallowed me again. Branches lashed at my face. Roots tried to trip me. The very ground seemed determined to drag me down. I could hear them behind me, the wet, frantic scrabbling of dozens of tiny hands clawing their way through the mud. I didn't know how long I ran. Minutes. Hours. It felt like an eternity. Finally, gasping and half dead with exhaustion, I burst out of the trees onto an old dirt road. For a moment, I thought I was safe. I staggered forward, my body screaming in protest. And then I saw it. In the middle of the road stood a figure. Not a child. Not exactly. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs too long, its skin stretched tight over its bones. Its face was a blank, featureless mask. No eyes, no mouth, just smooth, pale skin. And yet somehow, I knew it was smiling. It raised one long, skeletal arm and pointed at me. And from the woods behind me, I heard the children's laughter erupt again, louder this time, shrill and savage. I took a step back, heart hammering against my ribs. The figure didn't move. It just kept pointing. And then, in a voice like 1,000 whispers scraping against glass, it spoke. "You can't leave." The world tilted around me. The ground seemed to fall away. I turned and ran, not knowing, not caring where I was going anymore. Just away. Away from that thing. From all of it. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was no escape. Not anymore. I don't know how long I ran. I don't even know how I ended up here, in this place. It was like the world itself had folded in on me. I was back in the woods, but it wasn't the same woods. The trees were different, their trunks twisted, like ancient, gnarled hands reaching for the sky. The shadows between them were darker, deeper. They seemed to move. I stumbled, disoriented, the wet ground giving way beneath me. The rain was relentless, pounding against my skin, blurring everything around me. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming anymore. I couldn't tell if anything was real. The laughter, that awful mocking laughter, was still with me, ringing in my ears, but now it was joined by something else. A voice. "You're lost." It was a low, rasping whisper, coming from somewhere deep within the forest. But it wasn't like the other voices I'd heard. This one wasn't coming from behind me, chasing me. This one was right in front of me. I turned, trying to find the source of the voice. But the darkness closed in too quickly, the trees pressing in from all sides. "You can't leave, no matter how far you run." The voice was closer now, right in front of me. And then, I saw it. A mirror. It was standing in the middle of the forest, framed in dark, twisted branches. Its surface was cloudy and warped, like it had been pulled from the deepest depths of some hellish place. I froze, my blood running cold. A mirror, but not just any mirror. This one felt alive. The reflection staring back at me wasn't me. It was someone, something else. A figure, standing just behind me, wearing the same face I saw every day in the mirror. But its eyes were different. Black, empty, voids of darkness. I turned, expecting to find someone standing there. But there was no one. I looked back at the mirror. The reflection smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It was wide, far too wide, stretching unnaturally across its face. "Do you see it?" The voice spoke again, the one from the forest. But now it was in my head. I stumbled backward, my breath ragged. This was impossible. I was alone. There was no one here but me. And yet, the reflection in the mirror shifted. It was moving, pacing in the mirror like it was alive. "You've been here before." The voice whispered, louder now. "You've always been here, haven't you?" The reflection in the mirror tilted its head, as if it was studying me. And then, in an instant, it moved. The figure in the mirror reached out, its fingers touching the surface. And then, with a sickening crack, the glass shattered. But it didn't break like glass should. It cracked, like skin splitting open. And through the jagged shards, I could see something else. The world beyond the mirror wasn't the forest. It was the house. My house. But it was wrong. The walls were peeling away. The furniture was broken. And the same dark figures I had seen before were crawling through the rooms, whispering my name. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But before I could move, the reflection reached through the shards. It grabbed my wrist. It was ice cold. I tried to pull away, but it was too strong. The reflection, no, the thing in the mirror, yanked me forward, pulling me into the shattered glass. And then, just like that, the world twisted. Underscore 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 underscore. I woke up, gasping for breath, my chest heaving. I was back in the forest. But this time, it was silent. The rain had stopped. The laughter was gone. The shadows were still. For a moment, I thought maybe it had all been a dream. But when I looked down, I saw it. In my hand, clutched tightly, was a piece of broken glass. The edges were jagged, cutting into my palm. But the reflection on it, the same empty, hollow eyes, stared back at me. I opened my mouth to scream, but there was no sound. I woke up, gasping for breath, my chest heaving. I was back in the forest. But this time, it was silent. The rain had stopped. The laughter was gone. The shadows were still. For a moment, I thought maybe it had all been a dream. But when I looked down, I saw it. In my hand, clutched tightly, was a piece of broken glass. The edges were jagged, cutting into my palm. But the reflection on it, the same empty, hollow eyes, stared back at me. I opened my mouth to scream, but there was no sound. I stood frozen in the middle of the dark, dead forest. The broken glass in my hand felt cold, like it was pulling the warmth from my body, seeping into my very soul. My heartbeat thundered in my chest, but the world around me was eerily still. I forced my eyes away from the glass, looking around. I had to get out of here. I had to find a way out before whatever was haunting me came back. But the forest felt wrong. It felt alive, as though it was aware of me, as though it was closing in. The trees towered over me like prison bars. Their dark, twisted limbs seemed to reach for me, scraping against the sky. The shadows between the trees were thick, as though something was lurking in them, waiting. I tried to run, but the ground felt like it was shifting beneath my feet, pulling me back, dragging me deeper into the woods. My feet sank into the mud, the coldness of it crawling up my legs. I had no choice but to keep moving. I ran, but the forest didn't let me go. Every step felt like I was running in place, as though the trees were closing in on me with each stride. The wind began to howl again, tearing through the branches above. It screamed in my ears, as if trying to drown out everything else. You can never escape. The voice, that same low, rasping whisper, came from everywhere and nowhere at once. I whipped around, heart pounding, but there was nothing there. Just the trees and shadows. I kept running, not looking back. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure. It was standing at the edge of the trees, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, staring at me with those hollow black eyes. It was the same figure I had seen in the mirror. The reflection. It wasn't just a reflection. This thing was real. And it was following me. I stumbled backwards, my body frozen with terror. It began to move toward me, each step slow and deliberate. I felt the urge to scream again, but nothing came out. My throat was dry, constricted. I turned and ran, but the figure kept pace, always just behind me. Each time I thought I had gained distance, it was right there, closer, its cold, empty eyes watching me. The world around me seemed to warp, the trees bending and twisting, the air thick with an oppressive weight. I could feel it closing in, suffocating me. I tried to turn and confront it, to understand what it was. But as soon as I faced it, the ground beneath me gave way. I fell into the darkness. Underscore 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 underscore. I woke up again, but this time I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was in the house from the mirror. The air was thick, heavy with dust. The walls were cracked, the floors creaking beneath me as I stood up. I didn't remember how I got here, but it didn't matter, because something was wrong. Everything was wrong. The house felt alive, like it was breathing, shifting around me. The wallpaper peeled away, revealing something darker beneath. The floorboards groaned, as if the house was waking up, stretching, and watching me. I heard the faint sound of footsteps behind me. I turned, heart racing, but there was no one there. Only the shadows. And the laughter. That same haunting, mocking laughter. I stumbled forward, my eyes darting from corner to corner, trying to keep track of everything, but it was all slipping away. The house was changing before my eyes, rooms warping, doors opening and closing on their own. I reached for the nearest door, desperate for escape. But when I opened it, I was staring at the mirror. The same dark mirror from the forest. It stood there, framed in darkness, its surface cracked, the reflection staring back at me. I could see myself in the glass. But the version of me that looked back was not human. It was something else. Its skin was stretched tight, its eyes black and empty, and its mouth curled into that sick, wide smile. "Welcome home," it whispered, its voice filling the room. "This is where you belong." The house groaned, the walls closing in around me, and I realized, with a sinking feeling in my gut, that I had never left. The mirror wasn't just a reflection. It was a doorway. I couldn't move. The reflection in the mirror smiled at me, its lips stretching impossibly wide. The eyes, those cold, hollow eyes, stared into mine, burning into my soul. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, to escape, but my legs refused to obey. It was as if the house itself had taken control of me. The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang, trapping me inside. The room was suffocating. The air was thick with dust, heavy and stagnant. But the smell was wrong. It was like decay, like something had died here long ago and never left. I turned back to the mirror. The figure inside it didn't move, but I could feel its presence. I could feel its gaze burning through me. "You can never leave," it whispered, its voice echoing in the empty room. "You are mine now." I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry out for help, but my voice was caught in my throat. The weight of the house pressed down on me, and I realized, for the first time, that this was no ordinary place. This was a prison. A cage, built on the edge of reality and nightmare. I stumbled backwards, desperate to escape, but the walls, they were closing in. With each breath I took, the house seemed to get smaller, tighter. The shadows in the corners of the room grew longer, stretching out towards me like fingers, trying to pull me into the darkness. "You belong here." I spun around, my heart pounding, and saw him, the figure from the mirror. He was standing in the doorway now, staring at me with those same hollow eyes, the same sickening smile. But now, he wasn't just a reflection. He was here, in the room with me. I couldn't look away. I couldn't move. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The silence was suffocating, pressing down on me, until the house itself seemed to breathe in time with him. Then, he took a step forward. "You're mine now." I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I couldn't even move. I couldn't escape. The walls of the house seemed to bend and twist, like they were alive, like they were watching me. I turned, trying to break free, but the walls closed in faster. The shadows reached out, pulling at my limbs, pulling me towards the mirror. I reached for the door, my hand trembling, but it wouldn't open. The figure stepped closer, his smile widening. "You can never leave," he whispered again. His voice was sharp, like a knife cutting through the air. "You're trapped here forever." The house began to groan. The floor beneath me cracked, splitting open like it was alive, like it was breathing with its own life. I could feel the floorboards shifting, moving beneath me, pulling me down into the darkness. I fell. It wasn't a fall like any I had experienced before. It wasn't just the ground giving way. It was the house itself swallowing me whole. The walls shifted, contorting, folding in on themselves, as if the house were eating me alive. I landed hard, hitting the cold, wet ground with a sickening thud. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see. Everything around me was black. And then, I heard it. The sound of something moving in the dark. It was slow, steady, and getting closer. My heart raced, and I forced myself to move, to get up, to run. But the ground beneath me wasn't solid anymore. It felt soft, like it was shifting beneath me, like I was sinking into something. I looked down. The floor was no longer a floor. It was a mass of black, writhing tendrils, like some monstrous creature that was alive beneath me, moving and squirming, pulling me in. I gasped, trying to pull myself away, but it was too late. The tendrils grabbed my legs, pulling me deeper into the ground, pulling me into the house, into the darkness. I screamed, struggling, but the more I fought, the stronger they became, dragging me deeper and deeper into the suffocating blackness. Underscore 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 underscore. The darkness was absolute. There was no sound, no light, no escape. I couldn't see anything, not even my own hands in front of my face. The silence was deafening, a weight that pressed on my chest, making it impossible to breathe. I felt the tendrils tightening around me, pulling me further into the depths. My body was stiff, cold, and unresponsive. I tried to scream again, but nothing came out. My throat was dry, raw, like it had been ripped open from the inside. And then, I felt something cold. It was like fingers brushing against my skin, icy and unfeeling. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up, my heart hammering in my chest. And then, a voice. "Do you feel it?" The voice whispered, echoing in the darkness. "This is the end." I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. My chest tightened as though something was crushing me from all sides. The darkness was alive, suffocating me, swallowing me whole. I could feel it, pressing against me from all sides. The darkness was no longer just a void. It was alive, alive in ways that made every fiber of my being scream for escape. Yet everything around me kept pulling me deeper into its suffocating embrace. My breaths were shallow, my chest rising and falling with panic. Every movement I made seemed to make the darkness close in faster. I couldn't see. I couldn't hear. But I felt it. The weight of the house, the pulsating rhythm that seemed to be in sync with my own heartbeat. Then, I felt a sudden shift. The ground beneath me trembled, and the tendrils that had been dragging me began to loosen, as if the house was pulling back, giving me a moment of mercy. For a fleeting second, I thought I might be free, that I might escape this nightmare. But there was no escape. Not yet. The darkness parted just enough for me to see a faint light in the distance. A soft, eerie glow, like the last breath of a dying star. It was almost inviting. I forced myself to move toward it. With every step, the ground seemed to shift, pulling me back with each forward motion. The light flickered, then seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat of its own. It wasn't natural. It wasn't a light meant for a human to follow. But I had no choice. I had to know what it was. I pushed forward, my hands scraping against the cold, wet walls of the house as I moved. The air grew colder the closer I got to the light, and the ground beneath me became slick, as though I was walking on ice. The glow intensified, and I saw what it was. A door. The door wasn't like any ordinary door. It was black, not just black, but infinitely black, like it absorbed all light around it. The wood seemed warped, twisted in unnatural angles, its surface scarred with marks that almost resembled claw scratches. I reached out toward it, trembling, my fingers brushing against the cool surface. And that's when I heard it. A sound. A low, guttural growl. My hand jerked back. I turned around, expecting to see the figure again, that hollow-eyed creature from the mirror. But it wasn't him. It was something worse. I didn't even see it at first. I only felt it, the air around me shifting, the ground shaking again, as if something was moving beneath me, something large, something alive. The darkness began to recede in waves, and with every wave, I could see it, rising from the depths, its form twisting and contorting in the shadows. It was a creature, but it wasn't just a creature. It was the house itself. It was the very essence of the house, made flesh, a mass of tendrils and shadow. Its eyes, those hollow eyes, staring at me from every angle. It roared. The sound reverberated in my chest, like a drumbeat, vibrating the air around me. My ears rang from the intensity of it. My vision blurred, my body frozen in place by the sheer power of the creature's presence. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't obey. I was paralyzed with fear, trapped in place as the creature advanced toward me, its dark form shifting like liquid, its countless eyes watching my every move. It opened its mouth, a gaping void of blackness, and I could feel the cold air pouring from it, suffocating me, filling me with a sense of doom. "You will never leave," it hissed, its voice a chorus of whispers, 1,000 voices overlapping, each one more twisted than the last. "The house will claim you. You will never leave. You belong to us." The words echoed through my mind, seeping into my thoughts, filling me with dread. It wasn't just the creature that was speaking. It was the house. The entire house was alive. It was a living, breathing entity, and I was caught in its grip. The air grew colder still, and I could feel the tendrils of darkness wrapping around my arms, pulling me towards the creature. I was no longer in control of my own body. It was as if I was being dragged into the heart of the house, into its very soul. I felt myself being pulled closer to that gaping mouth, the darkness swallowing me whole. And then, just as I thought it was over, the door, that same black, warped door, opened. I don't know what happened next. It all blurred together in a haze of panic and fear. But I felt it. A burst of light. Not from the door, but from somewhere deep inside me. It was like a spark, a last flicker of hope in the overwhelming darkness. I reached for the door. I don't know how, but I did. And as soon as my hand touched the door, the creature screamed. It wasn't a scream of pain. It was a scream of anger. The house shook, and the ground cracked open beneath me. The air split with the force of the sound, and the house seemed to collapse in on itself, the walls crumbling, the darkness recoiling. But the door, it was my only chance. I pushed through it, my body shaking, my mind numb with fear. I stepped through the door and into the light, just as the house collapsed behind me. Underscore 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 underscore. The door slammed shut, cutting off the darkness. I stumbled, disoriented, into a new place. It was a hallway, but not like any I had seen before. The walls were smooth, glowing with a soft, golden light. The air smelled fresh, almost alive, like a forest after the rain. It didn't make sense. How could this be? But I didn't have time to question it. I could still feel the weight of the house, its presence lingering just behind me, just out of reach. I couldn't stay here. I had to keep moving. But where was I? And how did I get here? And most importantly, who was still watching me? I stood there, breathing heavily, my chest rising and falling in panic. The hallway around me was bathed in that strange golden light, but it didn't feel real. It felt wrong. It was too quiet, too still. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, the only sound in the oppressive silence. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The house, the creature, the darkness. It was all too much. Where was I? I took a tentative step forward, the floor beneath me soft and smooth, like polished stone. The walls were tall, stretching upwards to an unseen ceiling. Every corner was rounded, as if the very geometry of the place was designed to disorient me, to make me feel like I was walking in a dream, or a nightmare. I didn't know which. The hallway seemed to stretch forever in both directions. There were no windows, no doors, just endless, smooth walls of golden light. No shadows, no signs of life. Nothing but the oppressive silence. I walked for what felt like hours, but time didn't seem to exist here. It was as if I was moving through a space that wasn't governed by the rules of reality. Every step I took felt heavier, as though the air itself was growing denser, pushing back against me. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't go back. The house, the creature, they were still out there, somewhere, waiting. I had to keep moving forward. There had to be a way out. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me, watching me. I spun around, my heart racing, expecting to see something, anything, lurking in the golden glow. But there was nothing. Just the empty hallway stretching endlessly ahead of me. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind. I was starting to feel dizzy, like the very air was clouding my thoughts, clouding my vision. I reached out to steady myself against the wall, but as soon as my fingers brushed the surface, a sound, a faint whisper, barely audible. It wasn't a voice, not at first. It was just a sound, like the rustling of paper or a breeze brushing against the walls. But it was enough to make my blood run cold. I froze. I could feel my pulse in my throat, in my ears. The whispering sound grew louder, closer. It was coming from all around me, swirling through the air like 1,000 soft voices murmuring at once. I couldn't understand the words, but I could feel the malice in them. It was like the hallway itself was alive, speaking to me, pulling me deeper into its grasp. I took a step back, my body trembling with fear, but as soon as I did, I heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps, echoing from the end of the hallway. I froze again. The footsteps were slow, measured, but they were getting closer. I turned to run, my heart racing in my chest, but before I could move, the walls shifted. The hallway narrowed, the golden light flickering, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist like dark fingers. I could feel it now, a presence. Something watching me. Something just behind me, its gaze burning into my back. But I didn't dare turn around. I didn't dare look. The footsteps were louder now, closer. I had to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was paralyzed, frozen in place by the weight of whatever was behind me. Then, I heard it. A voice. Not a whisper, but clear, as if it was standing right next to me. "You should never have come here." I spun around, my breath catching in my throat, but there was nothing there. Nothing but the walls and the endless hallway stretching on forever. "You're mine now." The voice was sharper this time, more insistent, filled with a coldness that sent a shiver down my spine. "There's no escape." The air grew heavier, colder. I could feel the weight of it pressing against me, suffocating me. Then, without warning, the floor beneath me cracked open. I stumbled, falling forward, my hands hitting the cold, hard ground. The crack spread out in front of me, widening, deepening, revealing a void, a blackness that swallowed everything in its path. I tried to pull myself away, but the crack continued to grow, stretching across the floor like a massive, hungry mouth. I scrambled backward, my heart pounding, but it was no use. The crack was too wide, too deep. And then, out of the darkness, a hand reached up. It was pale, almost bone-white, its fingers long and spindly, stretching upward from the void like a skeletal claw. I screamed, my voice hoarse and terrified, as I tried to pull myself away, but the hand, it was moving toward me, closer. I could hear it now, a low, raspy breathing coming from the depths of the darkness. The hand gripped the edge of the crack, and another hand followed, pulling itself out, its fingers scraping across the floor. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I ran. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there. Not with that thing following me. I ran down the hallway, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my feet slipping on the smooth floor, my mind racing. Every step I took felt like it was taking me farther away from safety, farther away from any hope of escape. The footsteps were still behind me, but now they were joined by something else. A dragging sound. Like something heavy, something ancient, was being dragged along the floor. It was getting closer, faster. I couldn't outrun it. I couldn't escape it. I had to face it. I stopped, turning to face the darkness that had been chasing me. But there was nothing there, just silence. And then, the whispering returned. It wasn't coming from the walls anymore. It was coming from inside me. The air was thick with dread, each breath I took feeling like it was being stolen from me by the very walls that surrounded me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was not just behind me, but within me now. The whispering was louder, not just in the air, but deep in my mind, echoing through my thoughts. "You can never leave." The words weren't just spoken aloud, they were inside me, crawling beneath my skin, worming their way into my soul. I clenched my teeth, trying to push it all away, but the more I resisted, the stronger the whispers grew. I was spiraling, losing myself to whatever this place was. The floor beneath me shifted again, as if the house itself were breathing, expanding, and contracting in slow, deliberate pulses. My vision blurred, the edges of the hallway flickering between reality and nightmare, like a broken film reel. One moment, the walls were smooth and golden, and the next, they were glistening with wetness, the walls covered in dripping shadows, as though the entire place had become alive with malevolent intent. The whispers started to make sense now, forming into coherent words. "This is where you belong. You will never be free." I pressed my hands to my ears, desperate to block it out, but the voices didn't just speak through sound, they felt like tendrils of thought, wrapping around my mind. The more I struggled, the more they squeezed. A violent shudder ripped through me, and for the briefest moment, I thought I saw something moving in the shadows at the far end of the hallway. My heart lurched in my chest, and I stumbled backward, my legs weak from the tension. But as I blinked, it was gone, vanished into the golden haze, like a memory that slipped through my fingers. No, I couldn't keep doing this. The silence was deafening now. The whispers had faded, leaving only the cold, hollow silence of the hallway. My breath echoed in the emptiness, mingling with the odd, ever-present dragging sound from further down the hall. There was something down there. Something that had been following me for far too long. I forced my legs to move, pushing through the fear, the dizziness that threatened to consume me. Each step was harder than the last, the air becoming thicker with every moment. I didn't know what was worse, the silence or the growing sense of being pursued, hunted by something unseen, something that had already claimed this place as its own. And then, without warning, I heard it. A door, far ahead of me, creaking open. I stopped, frozen in place. My heart was a hammer in my chest. There were no doors in this hallway, no rooms, no places to hide. But this was something different. I could feel my pulse in my throat, each beat echoing louder than the last, as I started toward the sound, drawn like a moth to a flame. It was as though my body was no longer my own, my legs moving without my will. I had to get there, had to see, and when I reached it, I felt it. The cold air, the sudden chill that swept over me. The door was cracked open just a few inches, as though someone, or something, had been waiting for me. I pushed the door open with trembling hands, and it creaked loudly in the silence, as though protesting my intrusion. What I saw on the other side made my stomach lurch. It was another hallway, just as long, just as infinite as the one I had just walked down. But this one was different. There was no light here, just a pitch-black void that seemed to stretch forever. And standing in the middle of it was a figure. I could barely make out its shape in the darkness, but the silhouette was unmistakable. Tall, thin, and humanoid, it was like something out of my nightmares. Its limbs were too long, too thin, its body unnaturally elongated. It was staring directly at me. Its eyes, I couldn't see them at first, but I could feel them, burning into me like hot coals. My heart stuttered in my chest as I stood there, paralyzed by the weight of its gaze. You shouldn't have come. The voice was no longer a whisper. It was real. It was speaking directly into my mind. I tried to back away, but the door behind me slammed shut with an unnatural force. I spun around, frantic, but there was no escape. The hallway had swallowed me whole. The figure moved. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. But then, it was coming toward me. Each step it took was soundless, as though the ground beneath its feet had absorbed all noise, leaving only its presence. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt like they were made of stone, unable to carry me away from this creature that loomed closer with each passing second. It was too late. The figure reached out its hand, and it was long, impossibly long, its fingers extending far past what any human's body could allow. It reached for me, the air around it thickening, as though its touch could freeze the very life out of me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My throat was tight, suffocating, and before I could even blink, its fingers wrapped around my wrist. And then, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, the world felt wrong. The air was heavy with a suffocating coldness, and the familiar warmth of the golden light had vanished. Instead, there was an oppressive darkness around me, so deep that I could barely make out my own hands in front of my face. The silence was absolute, but it wasn't a quiet calm. It was the kind of silence that felt like it was pressing in on me, a weight that made every breath a struggle. I could still feel the grip around my wrist, though it wasn't physical. It was as if the creature's touch had imprinted itself on my skin, burrowing into my very being. I tried to move, but my body felt foreign, distant, as if it wasn't mine anymore. Panic surged through me. I was trapped, but where? What had happened to the hallway? The golden light? The creature? What was this place? I tried to sit up, but my limbs were sluggish, as if they didn't want to obey me. When I finally managed to lift myself off the cold, hard floor, I realized something was horribly wrong. I wasn't alone. There were figures around me. shadowy, indistinct forms, shifting just outside my range of vision. I could feel their eyes on me, and even though they never spoke, the weight of their presence was enough to make my heart pound painfully in my chest. I blinked, my vision adjusting to the darkness, and the figures became clearer. They weren't just shadows. They were people, or what used to be people. Their faces were distorted, eyes hollow, their bodies twisted in unnatural ways. Some of them were still, frozen in place, while others paced back and forth, whispering to each other in a language I didn't understand. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as I tried to take in my surroundings. The walls here were like living things, growing and shifting, stretching toward the ceiling. The floor was uneven, pulsating like it had a life of its own. The whispers started again, faint at first, like the rustling of leaves on a breeze, but quickly growing louder. They didn't seem to come from the figures around me. They were coming from everywhere, from within the walls, from the floor beneath me. The air itself seemed to speak. "You're here now. You belong to us." The words were impossible to escape. They wrapped around me, drowning me in their weight. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. What was this place? What was happening to me? Suddenly, the air grew colder. I looked down, and beneath my feet, the floor had cracked open, revealing a deep, dark abyss. The abyss seemed endless, its depths dark and consuming. A low, growling sound came from within it, like the growl of some ancient beast. It made my blood run cold. The whispers became louder, more urgent. "Go. Down. Down." I felt the pull, the overwhelming urge to move toward the abyss. My legs moved before I even consciously told them to. I stumbled toward the edge, drawn as though I had no choice in the matter. The shadows around me began to stretch and warp, reaching out toward me. Their hands, or what I thought were hands, scraped against the floor, making terrible scraping noises. The air was filled with the sound of their movements. They were coming for me. "You can't escape. You belong to us now." I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the darkness, drowned in the nothingness that surrounded me. And then, as I teetered on the edge of the abyss, something in the shadows reached for me. A hand, pale and skeletal, with long, twisting fingers, grabbed hold of my arm, dragging me toward the void. I fought, kicking and clawing at the air, but the grip was unrelenting. I could feel the coldness seep through my skin, into my bones, as the hand pulled me closer to the darkness. I couldn't let this happen. I could feel myself falling, not physically, but mentally, as though the very fabric of my existence was being sucked into the void. I couldn't hold on anymore. I was going to be consumed. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. The hand released me. The coldness receded. The whispers fell silent. I opened my eyes, gasping for breath. My head was spinning, and for a moment, I didn't know if I was still dreaming. But when I looked around, everything was different. The figures, the abyss, the twisted shadows, they were gone. I was back in the hallway. The golden light had returned, softer this time, but it was still there. My hands shook uncontrollably, my legs barely able to support my weight as I slowly stood. But I wasn't alone. The creature was standing before me, blocking my path. Its eyes were glowing now, a sickly, unnatural green, its long, bony fingers curling in front of it as it took a slow step toward me. It opened its mouth, or what used to be a mouth, a black abyss that seemed to devour all light. "You're not free," it said, its voice like 1,000 scraping nails on a chalkboard. "No one leaves. Not here." I took a step back, but the creature was already closing the distance between us. "You're part of this now. You'll never leave." I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The creature's gaze seemed to pierce through me, its presence overwhelming, suffocating. And then, without warning, the hallway shifted again. This time, the walls collapsed inward, the ground crumbling beneath my feet as I tumbled into a new darkness. The darkness was no longer something to fear. It had become a part of me, a silent, oppressive weight that clung to my very soul. I had been running for what felt like days, hours, maybe even minutes. Time had lost its meaning here, but the truth had begun to settle in, creeping into my mind like the cold that wrapped itself around my skin. I wasn't going to escape. I had tried. I had fought. But no matter how far I ran, the darkness always found me. The voices always echoed back, and the shadows followed my every step. The walls were closing in once more, but this time, something was different. I wasn't scared. Not like before. I wasn't afraid of the creature that haunted my every moment, nor was I afraid of the abyss that seemed to threaten my very existence. No. This time, I had finally accepted it. This place, this nightmare, it was mine. I wasn't the prey anymore. I was the hunter. I walked forward, my steps sure and steady. I could feel the creature's presence behind me, just as it always had been, but it was no longer a force of fear. It was just a part of this place, like the rest of it. I was its equal now. As I moved deeper into the heart of the darkness, the whispers began to fade. They didn't need to speak anymore because I had learned their language. The voices had never been meant to haunt me. They had been meant to guide me, to show me the truth of what I was becoming. I turned to face the creature that had haunted me since the beginning, its green eyes glowing brighter now than ever before. But this time, it didn't approach me with malice. There was no hunger in its gaze. There was no fear. It accepted me. "You belong here," it whispered, its voice no longer a threat, but a welcome. "You are one of us now." I nodded, the weight of its words settling in me like a truth I had known all along. The walls around us began to change. They stretched, warping into something that resembled a familiar world, a world I had known before the darkness had taken me. But it wasn't the same. It was mine now, a world built from my fears, my pain, my regrets. It was a world where everything was dark, where nothing was ever truly free. And yet, it was mine. I reached out, my fingers brushing the wall. It pulsed beneath my touch, alive with an energy I couldn't explain. This was the end, and it was the beginning. I had been consumed, but in consuming me, the darkness had made me its own. I turned my back to the creature. The whispers no longer urged me forward. Instead, they became a soft hum, an unspoken promise that I had come to understand. This world was mine to shape. I would never leave, and neither would the darkness. Some doors, once opened, never truly close. You thought this was just a story, a voice in the dark, a dream you'd wake up from. But what if I told you, the darkness never left? It lives in the quiet corners of your room, in the shadows behind your thoughts, in the silence between your heartbeats. He didn't escape, he accepted. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the darkness wanted all along. You kept listening. Now it knows your name. If you want to know what happens next, if you're brave enough to hear the next tale, subscribe and come back tomorrow night. The darkness has more to tell you. Sleep tight, if you still can.